What games should you play of 2020? Here's my top 5 picks. First off, these are games I streamed last year, and they're my favorite of 2020. This is my opinion, so please keep that in mind. There's obviously games I didn't play last year, so if I didn't call out your favorite, leave me a comment below. Starting off with the number 5 spot, it's a PS5 exclusive, Demon's Souls Remake. Even though this game is over a decade old, it was my first time playing Demon's Souls, and I'm thrilled I waited. This is truly a remake and not an Ultra HD version of the PS3 original. This game is absolutely gorgeous and showcases the first instincts FromSoft had when taking a swing at the first Souls entry title, which is remarkable when you stop and think about it. It's also the only title I played that truly felt next gen, which is, again, ironic being an old game. The texture maps, animations, the lighting, and the load times all just screamed next gen to me. In a lot of recent releases, you can see where the texture maps start to fall apart with lower resolutions when you get close to them. That didn't seem like the case with Demon's Souls. This game was built with next gen hardware in mind, so the limitations of texture map size and memory footprint was tailored to the PS5's hardware, which is definitely noticeable when you play the game. And yes, the game is a pain in the ass in some areas. It can be tough, but not as tough as you'd think. The bosses are actually fairly easy in comparison to other Souls games. The real difficulty is the level design. Some of the areas are just brutal to run back through to get another attempt at the boss, or whatever location you're currently going towards. Some people say that the newest Souls-style games are too generous when it comes to bonfires and checkpoints. Personally, I think Demon's Souls was too harsh on the checkpoint system, so I'm glad FromSoft has evolved in this perspective. If you have a PS5 or plan on getting one soon, I highly recommend Demon's Souls Remake. The number 4 spot on the list is an indie title that came out of early access last year, Hades. What do you get when you mix Supergiant Games art style with roguelite mechanics, Greek mythology, and extremely addicting isometric combat? You get this amazing game. This title was a surprise for me. I'd heard bits and pieces about it since it was in early access for about 2 years, and if you're a fan of Dead Cells, another amazing indie title, then there is a high chance that you're gonna love this game. Supergiant Games is known for making highly stylized titles such as Bastion, Transistor, Pyre, and they deliver in this one tremendously. The artwork is just dripping with love, and the music is fantastic, and the voice acting is surprisingly deep. So much so that I really started caring about the story that was being told in the roguelite adventure, and that's something that's traditionally very hard to achieve from a game design viewpoint.
Hey again, as ever, Zag. Now you keep at it like you have been, and I bet we'll all be hanging out up here in no time flat. I'm with you all the way.
Another major hurdle for roguelike developers to overcome is the reason for replaying the game loop over and over. Hades is set up in a clever tale of Greek gods clashing over status and power. You play as Zagreus, prince of the underworld and nephew of pretty much every Greek god. And your goal is to get out of the underworld, for reasons that I will not spoil in this video. Hades, your father, wants you to stay put, and every time you die, you get resurrected in the underworld kingdom. What's astonishing is the amount of dialogue and changes that happen after pretty much every run. You'll meet gods during runs, and they'll grant you powers to help you get out of the underworld. First time meeting them, you'll get specific dialogue, but subsequent times and attempts from escaping the underworld will evolve their dialogue. And there's quite a few of these gods to randomly bump into. It's very impressive. And to top it all off, the combat is just plain satisfying with a surprising amount of depth. You'll find some runs are insanely broken, and others are just duds due to bad RNG. But that's also the roguelite experience for you. Currently, Hades is on Steam and Nintendo Switch. It's possible it could end up on PS4, PS5, Xbox in 2021, but no official dates have been set, and things could definitely change. Arguably, the Switch version could be the de facto experience since it's a perfect quick run-on-the-go type of game. Next up on the list is from another indie developer. Well, sort of indie. They're technically part of the Xbox Game Studios now. Number 3 is Ori and the Will of the Wisps. This one was another surprise for me. I did not expect to love this game as much as I did. It is arguably the most beautiful on the list, which is saying a lot. It's also a retro-inspired platformer, a Metroidvania-style game. One of the immediate hooks that brings you in is the fluid controls and combat. This platformer feels highly detailed and responsive. The environments are filled with secrets, so you'll be able to put to test all of your skills you learn as the sandbox expands with progression in the game. Again, I cannot say this enough. This game is absolutely gorgeous. It's dripping with artistic love from gentle animations, lush environment details, and a score that'll make you weep. The story is moving and powerful, and the boss fights are epic. You can also collect and unlock a ton of upgrades throughout your playthrough, which you could easily miss if you're not hunting for secrets. My only real criticism I experienced was towards the end during a certain timed level. I like to play most games on the hardest difficulty available, and this game presented a decent challenge that made sense throughout most of the game. Until you get to this area that is progression dependent. It just seemed poorly tuned in difficulty in comparison to the rest of the game. If you're playing on a normal difficulty, you probably won't bat an eye, it won't be a problem for you. But for me, This level was just stupidly difficult and required speedrunner level focus and execution. Aside from that blemish, it is a perfect Metroidvania platformer. And it's also on the Game Pass, both PC and Xbox. If you have an Xbox Series X, you can play it at 4K 120Hz, assuming you have a TV that can support it. Definitely check out Ori and the Will of Wisps. Next up on the list will be no surprise, and another PlayStation exclusive. Sitting at number 2, must-play games from 2020, Final Fantasy VII Remake. As a kid, I played the original on the OG PlayStation. I definitely enjoyed it, but I didn't love it. So up until release, I was mildly interested in what this remake was going to dish out. Square Enix absolutely delivered with this title. While this is a remake, it's basically a new game loosely following the original Final Fantasy VII. Everything in this game takes place in Midgar, since this is part 1 of a series, so you might think that the game is light on content from an original perspective. Square Enix took their time to fill out the gaps and really develop the characters and environment to a great degree with a total of 18 chapters, so it's definitely not short by any means. This game still has classic Final Fantasy cringe moments, and I honestly think they add just enough of this to make moments endearing between characters. It's silly, but serious, but also very silly. Visually, this game is an absolute stunner. The character models and animations especially. The facial animations really help fill out the emotional weight that's being conveyed in the scenes that just could not exist in the original title from 1997. This helps give the story way more gravity and impact as things unfold. And again, I should mention that this is not a one-to-one remake of the original. Without spoiling anything, think of it as a new timeline being splintered off from the original. This new direction makes part 2 even more exciting because lots and lots of unknowns currently exist as to what is going to happen to the squad. Also a huge refinement, in my opinion, is the combat system. Having played Final Fantasy 15, I was worried that the combat was going to become dull after a bit. I was wrong. Square Enix seems to have cracked the code in what makes combat tick in this game. Each character has unique moves, leveling systems, materia builds, and combat tricks. Surprisingly, it's one of the standout features of the game. Combat is fun, period. While I know Final Fantasy games are not for everyone, this remake might just be the title that gets people into the franchise and makes them a lifelong fan. If you're at all curious, I highly recommend giving it a shot. The only real problem I have with this game is waiting however many years until the next part comes out. And now, we have our number 1 must-play title of 2020, Ghost of Tsushima. This game, man, this freaking game. This was my game of the year for 2020, hands down, no contest for me. It delivered on so many fronts, from the combat, storytelling, open world, artwork, and then suddenly an entire multiplayer component added months later. It is just an incredible gaming experience. And now it's a fluid 60 FPS on the PS5. Sucker Punch Productions managed to do something that I didn't think was possible on the PS4. Make an open world game with next-gen level load times. Honestly, it is voodoo magic what they're able to do with PS4 hardware. Now, this game is highly stylized and definitely helps towards its optimization, but it's remarkably impressive how much detail and visuals that this game packs. It also comes with a photo mode, and I did manage to spend about 4 hours in Act 1 in photo mode. The combat is addicting, the parry system feels good, and the skills make sense and the enemies are fun to fight. And you keep growing your samurai legend all the way through Act 3. I honestly didn't think it could get any better, and then it did. I also love the story, which portrayed the struggle between honor and fighting fire with fire against ruthless enemies. The side quests were as interesting as the main story, in my opinion. Your legend as the Ghost also grew as the game evolved, and eventually people were saying that the Ghost has supernatural abilities, which became the subject of folklore-level rumors about you, the Ghost. Really cool to see this evolve in the game as you play from Act 1 to Act 3. And to top all this off, Sucker Punch dropped a multiplayer component in October of 2020 that added a samurai looter, all with leveling, legendary gear, classes, and a raid that definitely felt like a love letter to Destiny's best raid experiences. And this was free. This was a free update, no paid DLC. Absolutely incredible what they did. Hands down, the number 1 game you should play from 2020. And if you have a PS5 or get one in the future, you'll be able to experience it in 60 FPS. So these are my top 5 must-play games from 2020. And before we finish out this video, I'm gonna throw a bonus honorable mention towards the end here. Streets of Rage 4. This was definitely a treat to play. It's a throwback to the Streets of Rage NES days with all the right upgrades of a modern version. It's a brand new game with unlockable characters and arcade-like progression system. I played it on PC via the Game Pass, but I would have happily paid the entry fee for this title. If you want a classic 2D brawler updated to modern standards, this is it. Finally, I was gonna mention my least favorite title of 2020 and why, but I'm not gonna do that. Instead, I'm gonna give you some hints as to what it is. First up, Sony exclusive, Part 2, and Game of the Year. I'll let you figure it out from there. So I'm definitely looking forward to 2021 and what releases are in store for us. And also finally making more YouTube content here on this channel. I plan on doing a mix of game reviews, technology, and travel vlog type of stuff. So So if that sounds like your style of content, then make sure to stick around. And with that said, I'll see you next time. Deuces.